This is Clive Barker's Hellraiser, which is actually from his novel Hellbound Heart. This is actually Clive Barker's first feature debut film. First off, even from the opening credits, but all through the film, there's an amazing score through the film. It's just great. Okay, so we open with Frank buying a box with no explanation, just a box. Then he performs some weird ritual with the box, and then blam, a bunch of chains come out and get him. And that's the scene. That's kind of leaving you hanging. Honestly, a majority of the film from here is pretty slow and short, and aren't all that interesting. Mostly due to the fact that Barker's filming was actually done in the house, except for the attic. Anyway, I'll go along here and try to skim to the good parts and the bad parts. The dad's face, I just want to punch. Anyways, for one thing, if nobody's been in the house for ages, how is there electricity? Just a thought. So Larry and Julia move into the old family house. Julia isn't too thrilled with being there, and Larry is trying his best to make a pitch to have her stay. Man, that guy's a brick. Meet Kirsty Cotton, Larry's daughter. We'll get back to her. There are some odd parts, like when Frank wants to come into the house. Julia is hesitant, and he's so bossy. It's just so awkward, this scene. Later on, when they get down and busy, which is why she wants to help him in the first place, if someone pulled a knife on you to undress you, wouldn't that ring some bells that something's a little off? This whole love scene is just something like strange out of Star Trek. And then she's crying about the memory. Is this a horror movie or some odd soap opera? So Larry cuts himself and the blood from his hand goes into the baseboards where Frank has been there for 10 years. The blood slowly begins to revive him. Personally, I think the scene where he slowly begins to come back for the first time is awesome. And again, no CGI. So they throw a party and Julia leaves because she's not feeling well, and ventures upstairs to meet the hideous-looking, incomplete Frank. Check out this scene. Kirsty's had a few, eh? Frank explains to Julia in the attic that he needs blood to be fully restored. The mother truly becomes one of the villains here. She goes back and agrees to bring him bodies to devour until he's 100%. Kirsty has a bad dream about her father dying and calls to her dad. I guess I kind of missed the point of that scene. So Julia sets out to scoop local guys, businessmen type, in order to get them back into the attic for Frank to chow down on. The first guy goes up and blam, she takes him out herself. Julia sees the aftermath of the feeding and is shocked. Frank looks more human after that. Julia cleans up like a pro after Frank's dinner. Also, Julia and Frank are now in love, but for some reason their close scenes just gross me right out. There's some creepy guy that appears in the pet store. It kind of makes sense later. We'll go into that. Julia nabs yet another victim for Frank. Their goal to get him strong enough to get away is slowly becoming realized, but they need also to get away from the Cenobots. Frank eventually sits down and explains to Julia where he has been and about the mysterious box. The door opens, and the carnage that is on the other side. Larry thinks he hears something in the attic, so he goes to investigate against Julia's advisement. I guess showing that Julia kind of does care for him to some degree. Larry and Julia are about to get down at one point, but Frank comes in and shows that he don't like that by slicing a rat, because he's sane like that, and Laura freaks out and puts an end to it. Obviously Frank has declared Julia his girl. Again, why? I don't know. Granted, he has no face, but I still think he could do better. Julia manages to swindle another dope into the trap, and wham, with the trusty old hammer. Kirsty, being outside hearing the whole thing, now suspects something very strange going on with her stepmother. She goes upstairs into the house and finds out what's been going down, and she finds her Uncle Frank, a distorted monster. Frank begins to give a speech, but it turns into a struggle. Kirsty grabs the box he needs and hauls it out the window. She makes her way outside and off with the box. Kirsty awakes in the hospital after passing out. They never explain how she got there. They give her the box and they tell her that they will check on her later, and they leave the box with her and lock her in the room, and I'm not really sure why they did that. She activates the box and it opens the doors. One of the coolest scenes in the movie is Kirsty walking down the hallway in the hospital into that crazy monster. Again, no CGI. Then the Cenobites come, and as the room changed shape and color and creepy things happened, and they appeared one by one, they informed her of what they were and what they intended to do. Demons to some, angels to others. Exploring pain, I guess. She makes a pact with them to return with Frank and spare her own life. Larry, the husband, comes home in a disappointing fashion. Larry gets killed off camera by Frank. Although this late in the film, they were running low into budget problems, which is also why the graphics at the end, with the Cenobites disappearing, also seemed less than professional. Kirsty decides she needs to see the body of Frank, so Frank, the live one, obliges. She sees the dead body, the one claiming to be Frank, and then the Cenobites appear in the attic, wanting their prize. They realize it's not Frank and want her. She splits and runs into her dad, or Frank, and then discovers that is actually Frank. To pile the whole story short here, Larry goes to stab Kirsty and gets Julia, which she isn't all that upset about. Kirsty goes upstairs and hides from Frank. Decent suspense moment for this film. Frank gets Kirsty cornered up in the attic, and Kirsty looks over the dead father's body. The Cenobites show up and pull Frank's flesh apart in every which way. It's a graphic scene, and really the climax of the film. And who's kidding who? We all wanted to see them go to work. Kirsten then figured out the box somehow. I'm not sure how she did that, and began sending the Cenobites back one by one until they're all gone. For some reason, they bring back the monster at the hospital to fight at the end. Yet, you'd think it'd be Pinhead. I'm still stumped as to how she knew how to use the box like a pro. But hey, it's a B-level movie. But to end the movie on the weirdest note ever, some hobo turns into a dragon and then grabs the box and flies away. I mean, how random can you possibly get? Considering the fact that this was a low-budget film and has developed such a cult following, I would certainly call this movie a success. It spawned numerous sequels, and each did alright. I'm not sure if any landed the same box office success as the first one. Maybe the second one came close to the same success. Interesting thing I read up on while reviewing this film was Doug Bradley, or Pinhead, wasn't recognized by many during the post-production party by the cast and crew because no one had ever seen him out of makeup. As well, I think the concept of Pinhead's look was very new and original. I don't recall anything like it from any other film. I think everyone would agree, in this film, really, Frank was more the antagonist than the Cenobites. He feared them, but he was more a menace to everyone else, even the woman he claimed to care for. Another thing, maybe I mentioned, I don't know about all these guys falling for her. She's subpar in my books. As well, the gore in this film can be compared to any 80s film, especially with a $1 million budget. And the dad in this film I don't think is a terribly great actor. But anyway, the film isn't really all that great. It's kind of slow at the beginning, with the exception being one moment with the Cenobites and then at the end with the Cenobites. And there's not a lot to keep your interest. Frank needs blood, the Cenobites are bad, and Kirsty figured out how to work out the box. I know it has a cult following, and it's a very different kind of film, which is why I'm going to rate this film a little bit differently than I rate most films. For myself, it's a little bit too slow, and I can't quite get into it, although I think the character Pinhead is cool, you just don't see enough of him, so I only rated it a 4 out of 10. However, I can appreciate how it can be a cult following, and it can have its own unique feel. So for that, I'll rate it a 7 out of 10. So, for me, Pat Slattery, this is Horror Movie Review Guy saying take care, subscribe, and see you later.